Hi, this is Garibay, and today we are going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I'm going to tell you the tale of $1,000. All right, so this is the night of the 2022 Major League Baseball Game 4 of the Phillies playing to beat the Houston Astros. Phillies are in the finals, right? I don't know what the score is, and I'm missing the game. Why am I missing the game? So that I could sell about, I think it was probably about 1,500 Magic the Gathering cards for $1,000 that's sitting in my pocket for one reason and one reason only: Dungeons and Dragons. All right, and so I'm going to tell you the story, and then we're going to kind of unpack it for its Dungeons and Dragons freight. What do we learn from this event about Dungeons and Dragons? Okay. So I am returning from Smyrna, Delaware, and I'm going to where I live, which is about 20 miles south of Philadelphia. And I drove 50 miles one way, having packed up one tote, a plastic tote about 2 feet high by about 1.5 feet. I packed up a tote full of Magic cards, right? And actually, I brought about a third of it home. There's still some behind me. But all the rares I had, and one Dungeons and Dragons, literally a Magic the Gathering Dungeons and Dragons 1983 Saturday morning cartoon Secret Lair, and literally well over 1,000 Magic the Gathering rares I just sold to an electrician who lives in Smyrna, Delaware, and he paid me $1,000 cash on a barrel for those cards. Okay. Now did I just sell my whole Magic collection? Not even remotely, right? I still have 5,000 to 10,000 cards at home that I need to go through, but the vast majority of those are going to be commons and uncommons. And what I just sold him was literally over 1,000 rares that I had pulled, delved into the dungeon of my own home, right? Because I've played Dungeons and Dragons since 1982. And I have played Magic the Gathering since 1993. And you know how I started playing Magic the Gathering? I was literally sitting in a FLGS, truly an FLGS, in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, in 1993, playing Dungeons and Dragons when the MTG cards came in, right? And we literally got up and read the cards, and it was on like Donkey Kong, and Magic the Gathering truly hit like a comet, and it really spread, like it really disrupted a lot of Dungeons and Dragons tables, and I was one of them. I was like, holy cow, this is incredible, right? And so I would say it dented my D&D playing by about a third, between 1993 and 1998, and then in 98 I kind of really went full back into Dungeons & Dragons, but I've never stopped, and I think I've played in every single pre-release for Magic the Gathering since 1993. Now, I'll explain how I do Magic the Gathering. I play in every pre-release. I never, ever, ever buy singles. Okay? Oh, I'm sorry. I don't buy single rares. I do buy singles for commons and uncommons. Just, it's a whole thing anyway. But I don't pay $20. I've never paid more than $1 for a card in my entire life. And the vast majority of my cards were gotten in pre-releases, right? And when I go to a pre-release, my whole family goes with me, right? And I pay for their tickets in, they play, and everybody gives me the cards at the end, right? And because I pay for all their stuff. And a lot of times my kids would be like, "Oh, can I have this card?" Of course you can have that card. You build decks, and my kids have free reign to build decks out of my collections, but they just build the decks they want to play. They don't put $100 cards in. And I'm even aware, because I see them at the pre-release, I know when I have a $60 card in my hand, right? So the thing is, I've played for 30 years, and I'm just and this is the third time I've sold out of Magic the Gathering. So I've done it twice before. This is the third time, and it's always the same reason. It's when the Garibays are tight. And I will tell you right now, this Vladimir Putin-fueled inflation storm that we are feeling in America is hurting the Garibays. We had caviar tastes for about 10 years, and we are living on a baloney budget now. Right now, I'm incredibly blessed. I'm incredibly fortunate to have the job I have, and they're incredibly generous with me, but we had built a life. I would buy some sneakers every now and then. I buy every single Dungeons and Dragons book that comes out, and I got some expensive tastes, right? And then also my wife, oh my gosh, my wife, I don't know what she spends her money on. I ain't never seen her buy nothing for herself. She's frugal as the day long, but boy, will she spend on the kids, right? Like, the kids are like, I need a gold-plated butt scratcher. She's like, let me go find the best one I can get for you, right? And the thing is, I love her, and I love that she loves our kids, right? And so I don't give her any hassle when she wants whatever for the kids, right? So technically, she's way less spending to me, because I don't think she buys anything for herself, but she buys whatever the kids want, right? Pretty much, so within limit, right? Actually, I don't think there is a limit. Believe it or not, I think the only way we get away with this is our kids genuinely love her, and her a lot more than me. Everybody loves my wife more than me. That's a kind of a no-brainer. But I think the reason, we buy them pretty much anything they ask for, but they love her so much, they don't ask her for much, right? They don't abuse her generosity, which is incredibly. So we've been hurting, man. This Vladimir Putin fueled inflation storm in America right now, it is hurting us, right? So one of the things I did is I have a full-time job. I work very hard all day long, and recently, for the last month, 3 months, when I'm done with my work, I stop, and I've been prepping all week to go to this farmer's market, right? So it took me about a month to get spun up for this farmer's market, and I got to the farmer's market, and I got to the point where I was, selling my ware. I got to the point where I could sell my wares at the farmer's market, no fruits or vegetables, literally all, collectibles, right? Like Pokemon, Dungeons and Dragons, which doesn't sell, Magic the Gathering, which does sell, and the few video games my kids don't play anymore, right? And comic books. I have a huge comic book collection, so I've been selling my stuff. So here's what happened for the last 3 weeks in a row. $150, $170, $70. Tonight, $1,000. But a dude who bought a handful of cards from me for about $20 said, hey, I want to buy more. And actually contacted me directly, from the card I gave him at the farmer's market. And then it wasn't a card. It was literally like my name and number written on a 3x5, cause this is it's like a second job. It's kind of weird, so I hauled a whole tote of Magic Rares, and he started making a pile, right? And we got to about $130, and he's like, there's so much here. What do you want for all of it? And I'm like, well, I can't sell all of it. I brought you all the rares. Everything on the table is the rares. But I need this 1983 open seal, secret lair. But you can have the sealed one, right? Like Dungeons and Dragons. So I had to pull some stuff off, right? And he's like, well, I'd like all the bulk. And I'm like, I can't sell you the bulk because I haven't gone through it. I don't know if there's rares in there. And I said, you know what? And we were kind of going back, and I was like, everything on the table and everything in the box, for everything on the table, you've already looked through. You know what's here. I don't know what's in the box, right? I just brought it in case you were looking for some commons and uncommons, right? So there was half the stuff in the box. I literally didn't even know what was in those boxes. I didn't know if it was half rares, and I was like, if you take it all now, and neither one of us looks in those boxes, it'd be $1,000, right? And he's like, well, can I look through a couple? And then we pulled one out, and sure enough, half the box was rares. And I'm like, everything in the box stays in the box, everything on the table for $1,000. And it got a little tense, but both of us were very patient and respectful to each other, and we worked the deal, right? And I took half of it home, right? And I'm going to go through that and see if there's any more rare. Well, I already know there's about 100 rares in there at least, right? So it was a whole thing, right? And so I'm going to be a lot better at role-playing merchants, because I've been a merchant, man. I know what it's like to stand over a table. And for me, my work is not standing over a table, right? I'm a knowledge worker. I really don't know much at all about, I really just don't know that much about, yeah, it was the whole thing. Like I just really don't know that much about selling things, but I'm learning, and there's a lot to learn. It is very complicated, right? So the reality is, I was very excited about all of this, and and so I got so we worked this deal for $1,000. Right now, this is the third time. This is the third time I have actually done. This is literally the third time I've done a sellout on Magic, right? I think the first time I did it was about $6,000. The second time was probably $3,000 or $4,000, but those were both in the 90s, right? And I'm telling you, man, the 90s was nuts, like crazy. Like I saw FLGS's rise and fall. Like I literally saw people lose houses over Magic in the early days. It was bonkers. You got no idea, right? So, but what I've been doing with this farmer's market thing is I get the money, and I literally come home, and I'm like, Leanne, and Leanne will be sitting, if she's in the dining room, I'll come up, I'll get a chair, and I will just count the 20s into her hand, right? And that's what's going to happen tonight, right? And the thing is, and here's the thing, right? This is incredibly helpful to me, because the reality is, I brought in like $420, right, from the farmers market, right? And honestly, $400. What's that gonna do, right? But what it did do is it told my wife, my wife sees me work a hard day, right? And then she sees me work hard after I'm done working, right? And then she sees me getting up at 4 a.m. to go to the farmers market and set up all these tables. And the reality is, when I come home and I put cash in hand, she knows I'm going to do what it takes to make sure everything's square for everybody, right? And tonight I'm going to be putting $1,000 in her hand, right? And that makes me feel good, because I was kind of feeling a little foolish, spending half my weekend for $400 for 3 weeks, you know what I mean? But the reality is, that, everything I'm selling, this is literally the fringes of my collection. This is just not even my favorite stuff, right? Like, so... And the reality is, one thing that's really, really special is Magic the Gathering. I was able to sell all these cards, right? And you know what I kept? I kept Adventures in Forgotten Realms, every single card. I didn't sell one of them. I kept all my Baldur's Gate cards. I kept all my Strixhaven cards. I kept all my Ravnica cards. I kept all my Theros cards. I kept every Dominaria card, right, from the new Dominaria set. And you know what? I kept Eldraine, and I kept Ikoria, right? And the reality is, I was able to sell all these cards that are worth 10 times more to people who play Magic to defeat another person. But my use of Magic the Gathering, I literally took $1,000 in today for Magic the Gathering. But I also spent $40 for 77 cards from TCG Player, getting all the Warhammer cards. But those Warhammer cards are going straight into a Dungeons & Dragons story deck. They're never going to see play, right? But this is the thing I love about D&D. Dungeons & Dragons is the most powerful secular filter for your life ever created, right? Because not only is it a filter for the most charismatic, confident, intelligent people in the world, it is also a filter for some of the most valuable things in the world, right? I've been going to the farmer's market, right? Last week, these two very nice ladies were on both sides of me, right? They had my stuff fit on 2 tables. Each one of them had 6 tables, right? The stuff I had is just D&D related collectibles, right? And things that a Dungeons & Dragons person would be interested in. They had vacuums and tools and all kinds of stuff that took way more space. I outsold, that was on the 170 day, right? I outsold both those ladies combined with just the material that a Dungeons & Dragons fan would get and use and take, right? And the reality is, just so you're aware, everything you rub Dungeons & Dragons on becomes more valuable, right? This is why I've been talking about these tangible campaign construction. Legos are worth a fortune, right? Now all of this stuff, you have to be a curator, right? You have to know how to classify. You have to know categories. You have to be able to hold 1,000 pieces of like ephemeral data in your head. Guess what helps with that? Reading 8,000 pages of canon for Dungeons & Dragons, right? Not only is Dungeons & Dragons a filter for the most charismatic, confident people in the world, it is also a filter for some of the most valuable physical things in the world, right? Legos, Magic the Gathering, right? I can fill a tote and outsell people who have packed entire cars, right? Because one Magic card could be $60, right? And honestly, Peter Atkinson, he made Magic. And when he had made his millions, you know what he bought? He didn't buy a yacht. He bought Dungeons & Dragons. And now, Dungeons & Dragons is using Magic the Gathering to make the people who have been allied to Dungeons & Dragons have a little bit more, right? And squeeze through this Vladimir Putin-inspired inflation storm, right? Dungeons & Dragons has helped me every step of my life, right? I'm an evangelical Christian first. Jesus is my Lord, and nothing has been better in my life than Jesus Christ. But when it comes to the secular side, nothing has helped me more than Dungeons & Dragons. It is an amazing filter to make your life better. And today, Dungeons & Dragons, I have been able to shift my use of Dungeons & Dragons, and because I don't need to play Magic the Gathering like a win-lose, I can play Magic the Gathering as let's build a story, right? And those cards are the cheapest. You can buy them for 13 cents a piece, right? But because these other people use Magic the Gathering to defeat other Magic the Gathering players, they pay $60 a card. Dungeons & Dragons is an amazing filter for life. It helps in a million different ways. How has Dungeons & Dragons helped you in surprising ways? Thank you for letting me share this story with you. I just am so happy to be driving home to my wife to put $1,000, 20 by 20 by 20, into her hand. I really feel, and that's what all this is about. I just want her to know, come heck or high water, I'm going to do what I need to make sure we have enough, right? And so I really would love to hear your stories about Dungeons & Dragons, how it helped you in surprising ways. And I also would love to hear, how are you working your way through this inflation storm? Are you feeling it the way the Garibays are? Or do you have some trick that helped you to be immune to this? I'm praying for each and every one of you out there. I hope that you have everything you need. And I hope this isn't hurting you the way it's squeezing the Garibays, right? Like, there's a lot of work out. I work very hard at my job, and I've been working very hard for these farmer market weekends, man. It's rough. You got to get your hustle on nowadays. How are you making it? I'd love to hear. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.